welcome back for season 3 of the Lighter Side. No, how about season 2 of the Lighter Side Network and season 3 of the Lighter Side.
That sounds better. I knew it sounded weird coming out of my mouth. Hi, Lumineers. Welcome back to the Lighter Side Network. Welcome to. Hi, Lumineers. Now you just got me goofy. Lumineers, let's have a personal chat right now. It's been take 4, and I can't get this right because I'm so darn excited that it is season 2 of the Lighter Side Network. Jesse Tight Pants is losing his mind. He's back for this season. He's behind camera laughing so hard. My guest has no idea what's happening right now. She's waiting so patiently. But I will say, we are happy to be here. We love the changes of the set and everything that's happening. Thank you so much for sharing the viewership with all your friends and passing the word around. It has really meant a lot to us. So we're at season 3, the Lighter Side Show. This season is going to be about the history of. So whoever we are picking and bringing up on stage, or whatever we are talking about, we want to get into the history of and how they got where they are. So I'm pretty excited about this season. We have a lot of amazing guests coming and amazing topics and channelings. So we've kind of gotten a little more organized here. Thanks to Colleen, who's behind the other camera. She's got it down to a science. Small smirk on her behalf, just so you know what's going on. I will say, before we start this, I have some housekeeping notes, and that's going to stay the same. I'm always going to inform you what's going on, because you guys are always asking, what's going on? If you like the information nice and organized, please head over to jamiebutlermedium.com. Check out the newsletter. Colleen puts it together. It is all in order. It's super sweet and nice. We do have some wonderful events coming up, like the Luma Summit, October 13th through the 15th. We have 18 lecturers, healers, experiences, some mystery things that I can't tell you about. It's been really hard to keep this secret. I'm not good at keeping secrets, especially to you Lumineers who are clairvoyant, clairaudient, empathic, and sensitive. You guys never get a good surprise, right? You always know what's about to happen. So I'm doing my best over here. And if you want a good surprise, come join us at the Center for Love and Light for Luma Summit. Another little class I have coming up, if you like doing the exercises and kind of stretching your natural intuitive abilities, then sign up for the buddy class. You'll definitely need a buddy with you in person, not somewhere else in the world, but it's online. And I'm going to go through all the exercises to build your intuitive abilities, whether it's seeing energy, healing, empathic, hearing, all kinds. It's a wonderful 6-week class, and I look forward to seeing you there. So now, down to our first guest, our first show. Bernette Sherman is with us here in the studio.
I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so happy you are here.
Thank you.
And I love it that Lumineers, you're probably going, wait a second, you haven't talked about her before. Like, this is, what's happening? She just came out of nowhere. Actually, in season 2 with one of our guests, Joy Goodman, at the end of it, she was like, you have to meet this person. I have this card. She handed it to me like it was gold. She was like, here, take this. You're going to call her, right? And I was like, okay. You kind of know when you're getting pushed or assigned or something has to happen. I was like, yes, I'll call her. We had lunch. I met your mother, and I was just like, I'm sold. I love this woman. I'm going to crawl inside of her and figure out what makes her tick. Hopefully that sounds okay. Woo. Well, that's how much I want to know.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. So she's such a beautiful spirit. You are. Thank you. So I'm happy to be here.
I want to know about you. So
Okay.
I think we can summarize, just for the Lumineers, the viewers, that you're an author, you're a writer, a channeler. Basically, you are the conduit of messages. You're the messenger.
I am a messenger. I had to try to define that for myself, even though I don't like labels very much. Trying to put it into some understanding that other people could relate to. I'm a messenger.
Messenger, very easy.
Yes.
Because you are a published author, a bestseller on Amazon.
Yes.
You can type in Bernette Sherman. We
Well,
have some of your books here.
Yeah, so I go by 2 names on Amazon. Yeah.
Can we share that ghostwriter name or that secret name? Or
I
are they
will.
not supposed to know it's you?
Well, I don't care if people who know me know it's me. But as a female writer of sci-fi,
You're on the end now.
as a female writer of sci-fi, there's a perception. And the being, of, a lot of the people who dominate that field are male. a lot of people who dominate that field are white males, and I happen to be neither. And so I didn't want to like get myself in a position where I didn't have a chance just coming out the box because of my name. Someone Googles me and they see me. So
So
came
do we
up
get to
with-
know?
this is my A. Bernette is what I write under my paranormal sci-fi fantasy. And this was my first novel. And I was like, okay, A. And it was kind of funny because I liked the first letters of the alphabet. So if they ever alphabetize something,
It's you.
it's first.
A. Bernette.
Yes.
A-B.
Yes, it is me. So I do write under that name, and then Bernette Sherman.
You not only write sci-fi though, you do poetry.
I do poetry and I do inspiration, and I don't have all of my books in here 'cause I'm kind of crazy
It'd be
with
too
writing.
much.
It would be, it might be too much. But this one is my poetry book I published in April, and I really love
This
this.
is new.
It is. This is the newest published work. Yes. So this one is just a few months old, and as you can tell from the title, Resist, Persist. There's some socio-political messages in there, but also of hope and inspiration and how to move past things in a way that don't necessarily entail combat fighting, but how do we rise above, but also see the importance of individuality and strength and
So
resistance.
with that being your latest kind of theme in the
Mhm.
book, has that always been in your life, that kind of feeling of
Interestingly, I grew up in a different way, so I didn't.
do tell? What does that mean?
So, I was born in the South. I was born in South Carolina, and when we were young, we moved to upstate New York, and spent a good part of my formative years, so from 2 to 10 in upstate New York, in Rochester, and we went to a church that was non-traditional. We went to church on Saturdays. We kept a lot of the Jewish holy days, but we didn't get Hanukkah. I'm not sure how we got we got the short end of the
that for
stick.
you.
Not sure how that worked, but our church was mixed, so ethnically mixed. My neighborhood, I lived in lower income housing projects, and it was probably 98% African American or Black. But I never saw myself as being different because of that. After Rochester, we moved back to South Carolina for a short while, but then we moved to Pittsburgh, and that was probably the biggest change for us. So we were still lower income, but we moved to what was at the time one of the top 10 richest school districts in the country. And so it completely shifted my perspective of what was possible. And I was the only Black person in my grade for middle school, and then high school, one other Black girl came to school. And so there were just the two of us in my whole grade, and less than 10 in the whole school. And that was high school, and with very wealthy or upper middle class kids. And so I saw things a little differently after that experience about potential and what we could do. But I also saw some of the discrepancies.
Yes.
And while I have to say I wouldn't say there was any overt racism that would be excessive. That would be excessive. There were comments on my locker a couple times, but I didn't see things. I was like, okay, some ignorant person put that there. And the fact that my friends around me were like, they felt terrible that someone else had done that.
Yeah, but just
Yeah.
noticing how you responded to something like that. I mean, it's got to come from, your parents, the core of your family, showing you that.
My mother was one of the most open people I know. I mean, and we were taught love. We had friends of all different shades and across different economic scales, and that was life. And when I moved to Pittsburgh, I realized, I don't have that kind of money, but that doesn't make me any less than. But I also realized that, and this is, I think, what feeds into some of the message in Resist, Persist is, I realized at 12 years old when I moved there, that I might be the only Black person some of these people would personally know. And that was a little heavy because you're thinking, okay, how I show up may form their opinion for
Is
anyone
that something
else.
you were really aware of?
I was very much aware of that. It very much shaped how I carried myself, what I did, how I interacted with people, when they asked about my hair, how I responded. It was very much a reality of I might be the Black person that they knew. That when they go back and reference life,
They go back to meeting you
they go back to me.
and seeing how you handled yourself.
Right. And so that was very important.
Wow. I'm a little speechless because I can't imagine having that kind of awareness at 12 and navigating that. You know, most 12-year-olds we talk to today are into their social media or they're into their gaming.
I might have been too heavy-handed, but we didn't have social media. But I think I was aware because I came out old.
You came out old.
I came out old.
I'd like to know more about that. You came out old. I mean, here you are today. You're the messenger. You're channeling.
Yeah.
I'd like to know how you even got to channeling. And was that part of your upbringing? You know, was that discussed? Speaking to spirit, channeling them, receiving messages as an individual, was that accepted?
It wasn't even
You're
something I
already
wasn't aware of. No, I mean, when I was very young, I realized that I was a little bit different, but I didn't know that no one else was like that, or other people weren't like that. You
Right.
don't know that it's not normal. My earliest experiences were probably between 3 and 5, which is probably normal for a lot of people. And I didn't know I would astral travel out of, like, at night, it was a lamppost. I didn't go far from home. There was a lamppost out the window that was so pretty. I would, like, go flying around it. And then I would plop back in bed and I could feel myself plop back in bed. I never told my mom. It was just something I did. There was a lamppost. It was nighttime. It was pretty. I would go fly around it until I was ready to go to sleep and come back and go
When
to
did you
sleep.
realize that was something called an outer body experience?
I was probably 20 years old before I really even gave it much thought. I stopped because I think I shut everything off when I was like 5 or 6 because I had scary experiences. In one of my poems, which is, I talk about kind of that paralysis, that sleep paralysis, and
Oh, yeah.
the feeling of things being on you and not letting you move. And that was more than I could wanted to deal with, and I let it go. And it went dormant. But the ability didn't stop. And I think that's kind of where channeling, a lot of people don't realize they are channels
Right.
because they don't do it in the way that they might see you do it or they might see on TV.
Right. They have a certain definition of it, but they're doing it
They're doing it
real in other ways.
in other ways, and my writing was my channeling back then. I would write poetry and I'd be thinking, why would a 12-year-old write this poetry? I'm like, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. But I mean, I'm very much aware of what I'm writing when I'm writing it. But the topics, the intensity of them was,
Far beyond you.
it wasn't 12-year-old. Granted, I came out an old soul, but it was still like, oh, okay. But I realized later that that's channeling. That's letting muse, spirit, what you want to call it, move through you and out into the world. And that's what the channel does. You're a conduit of energy. And so when I write, a lot of it is, I know, a form of channeling. It's coming through.
So at age 20, when you started getting definition or labels of what you've been doing, did it boost your spiritual growth? Do we even call it a spiritual growth? How do you connect to this? What do you call
What is
this that you do?
It is working with and for spirit. So it's working with and for spirit. I came here as a messenger. At 20 years old, I didn't know that. 20 years old, I'm still in college. You know, I'm not even into, any of this stuff. I completely left religion, left spirituality. I wasn't doing any of that. I was just doing me. And I remember when I was 22, had just graduated. I started going to this church because my mother was still Christian and more traditionally religious then. And I started going to this church, and I stayed there for a couple of years. And when I finally kind of studied my way out of traditional spirituality, it opened up some other things. So as I kind of left one thing, another thing came along, and it was still a few years before the switch came back on of mediumship, of being clairvoyant and clairsentient, clairaudient, because I had no time. I realized I didn't have a lot of time for it. And I didn't have a lot of interest. I was very busy. But I guess it's been 10 or 11 years. So my mom is an integral part of my life. She has been like my role model, and a lot of things, like when I left my traditional religion, years later she asked me for the it's probably a book length of, I wrote a book basically about leaving.
You wrote a book about leaving religion.
Yeah. But I didn't publish it as a book. I realized it was like a 40-page, 8.5 by 11 manuscript, which would have probably been like a 100-page book. But this is, 16 years, actually this month, 2001 is when I left. And I wrote this long essay with like footnotes and research.
So there's something to be said when you can remember the date of when something happened. That's impactful.
It was very, very impactful. And she later asked me for that when she was kind of doing her own thing. She was like, "Can I see that paper again?" I was like, "Sure." But it was very interesting because later I went to her new church, which was a spiritualist congregation in upstate New York, in Rochester, and I'm sitting there, and the lady at the podium points to me, and I'm thinking she must be talking to someone else, because she says, "You're a clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient." And I'm thinking, what does that mean? And two, who behind me is she really talking to? Because I had not even considered that. It's like I knew I spoke to my guides,
Did you even call them your guides?
I did call
You
them my
did?
guides. I knew I spoke to mine, but that was it.
So after she
The next
called
morning,
you out, oh my God, the very next morning.
I'm waking up, and we're out of town. I'm thinking, okay, young boy I used to know as a kid is here. My grandmother's here. There's all these energies I can feel around me, and I tell him I'm sleeping. You have to come back later.
Set the boundaries right away.
I'm like, you know what? You cannot interrupt my sleep time. But it was the next morning that it's like a light switch. It turned back on, and it's been on
Ever since.
Yeah.
So you decided to incorporate it into your career path.
Only because people kept asking.
Not because it was driven from within? What?
Because I was like, okay, I can help some people. People needed some help. They needed to know about a family member, or they wanted to connect with a loved one. And if I got a message for them, it was helpful to them, I would want to give that. And so I started doing that. And at first it was just family and friends and people who I knew and wouldn't bash me over the head if I didn't get a message for them. But eventually I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll do this for other people. I'll open myself up, because if my thing is, if God says you need to do something and I feel that call seriously, my response is to say yes, to show up, and then to be present. And that is consistently, even when it's hard, I say yes, and then I show up, and then I'm present. And things tend to work out. And so I did that, and 11 years later, I'm still learning, I'm still growing, I'm still doing, and I know that every every time I think I've found something, there's something more.
That's a really good point to make, because I think a lot of the Lumineers, when you're experiencing it and you look at somebody else, you think they've been doing that for a really long time. They know everything about this. Like, that's the person I need to listen to. But I've been doing it 26 years and I'm still learning. I get surprised almost every day and excited. Like, I didn't know it could work like that. I didn't know that could happen.
Right.
So it's nice that you've pointed that out. I like that. I have so many questions in my head.
Well, go for it.
I wanted to mention to the Lumineers, if you really like how Bernette's sharing her story and it's resonating with you, head to her website, BernetteSherman.com. Everything is on there. She does do private coaching, which is a creative coaching.
Creative coaching, yes.
And she does do her sessions over Skype, FaceTime, Facebook.
Yes, we have all kinds of video opportunities nowadays, but I use Facebook and I use Skype and sometimes I use Zoom.
Yeah, love the Zoom. So you don't have to be local to Atlanta to experience Bernette here. So definitely follow through. She's also on Facebook and YouTube, along with her Spirit Speaks channel.com, and that has all of your mediumship.
Yes, mediumship, channeling, and healing.
Yes, and the Spirit Speaks channel is the same for Facebook and YouTube, so you can see all the videos and follow. And of course, I've already asked her before we started here if she would channel for us. So the episode following soon will be a channeling. I'm excited.
That'll be fun, I think. I think that'll be fun.
So when you first got into, let's say 11 years ago, and they started showing up to you and you were just giving out messages here and there, and then people started hearing about you, what prompted the trance channeling? What got that going? Oh, I liked it when you rolled your eyes.
Oh my goodness.
This is a good story. Let's go ahead and just tuck in for this one.
So I guess I'd done a little bit of that where it's really a guide talking to someone, and I could tell that it's not just me because my voice will change and I'll talk fast and whisper, which isn't great, but I realized that this was different. So in March of this year, my mother is visiting. See, my mother is so key.
She's amazing.
She is.
I was
she
half
really is.
hoping she would be in tow with you today.
Oh,
just like
she is. She's out of town with my uncle who's not doing well right now. She's visiting him. But she was visiting in March, and she's watching a show on YouTube. And I come down, it's like 11. I'm like, it's time for me to go to bed. I come down to say goodnight, and she's watching this show, and I'm like, of course, oh, let me watch it for a minute. And I say, I could do that. And she says, yeah, you could. My mom was always the one who's like, you can do anything. Which is great, right? And sometimes I'm like, no, I can't do anything more.
Like, what show were you watching? Do you
The
remember?
Shiny Chat.
Okay.
I think Shiny Chat show. And it was only the channeling Eric. Had the channeling Eric connection. And so she says that. And I said, oh, maybe I could. And then instantly I feel this presence there. And I'm like, she's like, well, this guy's Eric, blah, blah, blah. And I said, does he look like, this? She's like, I think so. So she pulls a picture up on, on the phone. And I'm like, okay, he's here. He wants me to do something. But I had no interest in doing anything. I was trying to finish this book, and I was working on the book 2, because Chosen is a series. So I've got 4 books I've got to put out. And I was trying to edit that and another thing. So I was like,
Too much.
I don't have time for this. It's really what I thought was, I don't have time for this. And he's like, well, we really need you to be a voice for people who don't have a voice and who may not be comfortable coming through other channels and mediums. And I finally say, here's the deal.
You make a deal.
I make a deal.
God, I like the way you think.
Here's the deal.
You did come in an old soul.
I said, if you give me 5 groups or 5 people that you think I need to speak to, and I remember them in the morning when I wake up. That was the thing. Not just dream about them and forget them. I had to remember them when I woke up. Then I'll do it. So he did that. When in the morning, I rolled over and I had 5 groups. I can't remember all of them, but he buried the lead. So it was like he said like Maya Angelou. He said like some other person who was kind of famous. And I wasn't really interested in like channeling famous people. Then he buried slaves, and he did like 2 other things. But it was the slaves and like this other group that he like buried under the list, right? But I'd agreed. I said, give me 5, I'll do it. And so
You got 5.
I got 5.
Did you follow through?
We did. So that week, so my mom was leaving.
The week where you didn't have any time to do anything else?
That week.
Okay.
That week. I was like, okay, everything else. The nice thing about being a writer, you can kind of, especially if you're independent, you can push things. You just have to make up for it later.
Right.
You have to make up for it. So I pushed everything, and we recorded 14 sessions.
What?
In a 3-day period. Yes.
14 sessions in 3 days?
They're not, long. Some of them were 10 minutes. Some of them were up to 20 minutes of talking to these people on the other side who'd crossed over sometimes in very difficult circumstances. Sometimes their transition was fine, but they had something important that they needed to say and get a message back to people of today. And that was the first time I really let someone else use my body. And I will admit, I didn't like it.
Why?
Because if I was channeling some happy person for 14 sessions, it would have been different. Or, channeling an energy of wisdom and, who was coming from a place of they healed and they were energy and love. But these were hurting souls.
And even though they had these souls crossed over,
Not all of them had gone into the light.
so you had some that were still earthbound that you were
Still-
speaking to.
I feel like they were
So-
stuck in some middle level. Like they weren't here in this 40. They were stuck in kind of the astral plane. They were stuck in another level. But yeah, the very first one to this day, afterwards, her name was Barb. She hadn't forgiven herself. She hadn't forgiven her slave master, and she hadn't forgiven the whole situation. And even afterwards, we prayed for her. We sent her Reiki. We sent her healing because she was in such turmoil and such pain. And I realized after doing those 14 sessions, my mom was like, yeah, we'll continue doing them when I'm gone. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I want to. I don't know
hard
if
work.
I don't know if I want to, and I don't know if I want to do it. And you're all the way in Rochester, and I'm here. Because by
Did you
myself.
film those?
Yes.
Are those
Those are on the
viewable?
YouTube channel, on the Spirit Speaks channel. Those were on the Spirit Speaks channel. And then we did 2 more when she came back, when she moved here. Yeah. So I convinced her to move here. And so she moved here at the end of May. And that's when she had just moved here when you met her.
Oh my god.
Yeah. She just moved here, but we recorded 2 more. And those I didn't do trans. Those I did more of as a medium channel.
Mm-hmm.
So that there was a little boundary. I preserved my space.
So you felt like you had more control when you're doing
Yeah. So
quick medium
it
rather
was
than channel?
talk. I was talking. Yeah.
Yeah, listening and repeating.
Yeah, it was, and having a dialogue, which I think is a lot of fun because I'm part of the conversation too.
Right now you can contribute instead
Yeah, it
of.
was like, oh,
But I wanted to go back and ask a few questions if that's okay, and
Go for it.
please always stop me if you think it's too much to ask of. But I wanted to highlight that it was your first trans channel session, and you recorded it, like you filmed it,
yeah.
you posted it for everybody to see. I have to say it out loud because it took me years to let anybody see me on camera
It was-
channeling. Cause, right?
And I'm crying. I'm literally like tissue papers. I'm like, this is ugly. I never watched it.
Yeah. It's
My mother watched part of it. I haven't watched a single full one of them. There was one I watched a full episode of.
wow.
Because I've experienced them so intensely.
Yeah, you don't need to relive it.
I didn't need to relive it.
Which is what I wanted to ask. When you're trans channeling, do you remember? Do you feel what they're feeling? Like
So I
where
was feeling a lot.
can you point to where you are when you're channeling? Do you feel like you're still in, or are you kind of out? What's it like?
When I think about it, it's like I'm in my head, but I'm smaller.
You just
And so I'm listening, I'm watching, I'm observing, I'm present, I'm there.
but it's like you can't
But
control.
I'm like, so we're in this room,
Mhm.
and I could stop at any time, but my goal was to allow them to speak, allow them to have their voice, because that's what they really came for. And so it's like I'm sitting in the room, but my role is to not interject, is to be almost a silent observer and hold space for them.
It takes a lot of strength.
And holding that space, and it was very difficult. So I didn't physically feel pain, but their emotional suffering was very difficult.
Do you find that after those types of channelings that the emotional wear and tear on the body is still there, or does it heal? Does it go away? What's it
does.
like when you come back into it?
So when we did like 2 or 3, and I'd be like, that's it for today. Yeah, can't do any more, because I'd have to go and reboost myself and rejuvenate and clear, all of that stuff, so I could be fresh again. And I found that if it was a really emotional session, it did take a lot, because you're letting them express through you, and that takes energy.
And what's it like being able to experience their stories, their emotions? You said you were this silent observer. What's the difference of that and experiencing a dream? Or are there any differences? Just so for Lumineers who haven't experienced trance channeling, who want to develop that but maybe have a misunderstanding, or there's really no one definition. I mean, we're all so different, but
Yeah.
so curious.
So my experience was, it would kind of ease into it. So I would sometimes get a name, but I'm still kind of there. I would get a name. I might get a time frame when they lived, or an age, and then I would have to allow myself to step back and let them step forward. So we're still both there, but now the other person's standing in front, so to speak. And it's not like a dream, because in dreams you don't remember certain things. Whereas with this, I remember what was said. I remember why they were hurting, or why their message was important. And while I can't remember all the details now, at the time it's like, okay, she's hurting because she was part of the group who sold Africans. She was an African who's selling Africans to America. She couldn't forgive herself. In the next life, she came back as a slave, almost like karma. And that came out during her session. And you can just imagine, you hadn't forgiven yourself in the first one, and you've got this extra burden. So she was extremely weighed down, and you feel that. You feel it in a way that you don't feel a dream.
No.
It's much different.
So what's coming from these sessions? What do you...
It was healing. That's what I realized. One, healing for them, and healing for a lot of people who had been marginalized. So in addition to slaves who came through, there were some from the civil rights era, in the time between, for African Americans, slavery through. The last one who came through was actually a man from the 1980s. And his was much different, but we've had a woman who was a preacher's wife in Massachusetts, who was involved in kind of ostracizing and dealing the mistreatment of witches, as they would have called them, and how apologetic she was about that, and how she didn't have the strength at that point to speak up, because women didn't have power even then. Just being a woman and then trying to speak up against that, and being a preacher's wife. So we had that. We had a Native American come through in the first few sessions, who talked about the Dakota Access Pipeline in a way, and how that gave a rallying point for the people. So it's not just African Americans, but there are some other spots. The one who came in from the 1980s, I guess he actually 1970s, 1980s. He was actually a gay man in California, and his message was one of love, and how, they weren't accepted, but it took him time to forgive, it took him time to heal, but he come to a place finally.
So are you going to continue to do these types of channelings?
We are.
Or?
We're going to do them more like we did the last two, which is the mediumship style versus the trance. Only because I can do more that way. And I can give more energy and more time versus draining my personal reserves.
Do you think we can see a book coming from this where you get to talk to us about all the different styles of forgiveness and healing and the benefits of listening to spirit speak?
So,
Please.
it may be a few years down the road, but I do imagine that one day we'll have enough that we can transcribe the sessions.
Yeah.
And then we can discuss what came out of them, because it is very therapeutic. There were people who watch it and comment, I needed this.
Yeah.
I needed to see
I can
this.
imagine observing it just on video, what it could relieve and heal inside of you. And like stuff that we've been holding on to that we didn't know we were just holding it for our ancestors, for whomever, just to let it out.
To let it go. And to realize that they lived it, and most of them, only a few of them, I would say, were in a stuck place. A lot of them had reached the point of forgiveness. There was one who came through who was a white male who had been a sharecropper back in the 20s. And he'd done something to his neighbor who was also a sharecropper who was a black family. And he had not forgiven himself. However, the black family had moved on. They'd forgiven him. And he had to come back. There was a reuniting. And yeah, so it was healing for them, because these are people in spirit who are still in turmoil, who are still working through things. Just because you go to the other side doesn't mean it's all perfect.
Right. Here's the key to your heaven. Enjoy. Everything is fine.
Right. It's not like that necessarily. So they still needed to heal and work through things and forgive. And I think that's one of the important pieces. And out of that has come the reality that one day a book will probably come from it.
Mm-hmm.
And more may come from it. But that was actually the starting point for Seth. Like, I had never
Heard of Seth or?
Oh my goodness, it was embarrassing. Yeah.
Which let's use that embarrassment and ask. I now know that you work with Seth.
Yes.
Do you
It's a
think?
new thing. So yeah.
Do you think Seth would be willing to come
I think when
to
we
the
do
studio?
I think so. When I was driving over here, and I was like, who are we gonna talk to when we, I do think so. I think when we do the channeling, I think so.
So, is there one thing that you would like to leave with the Lumineers, or a bit of advice that's maybe sitting on the tip of your tongue or in the deep of your heart that you want to share?
Go with your truth. Go with your truth. I put that in almost everything I write, is a theme of the truth is within you, the power is within you, and love and unity can heal. In my Chosen series, it's a big overarching theme. In my poetry, in my other books, not novellas, that's a theme. Truth is in you, power is in you, love can heal. My song has that. I mean, that's part of the tags in my song.
You just released a song.
I did.
We're going to post that link for you guys to listen to the song. You can download it. It's
Yeah.
going to be on iTunes.
iTunes, Amazon, Google. It's called Walk in Peace. And the kind of subheading is Love and Heal the World. And
Which you are doing.
yeah.
Here and the beyond.
Yes. And it's really important work. And you're doing it. You do it.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
I want to say I really appreciate how you're giving us a new way of looking at healing. I think as living our lives, we talk about we have to fix this, we have to look at us, we have to, go center for us and look beyond. What if it is actually going to the beyond and listening to them and helping them and allowing them to heal, and then feeling the
Feeling
domino effect coming to us. And it's just a whole new way of looking at how to heal the world.
Mhm.
You know, look at the unseen as well as being just as valuable.
Yes. And sometimes we don't realize the impact. And I'm sure you've probably heard of, attachments, spiritual attachments.
Yes.
And these entities who have crossed over and are not healed. And they remain here and they connect to people who are here.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're people who are carrying their original burdens, now they're carrying the burdens of someone else on them.
Yes, that is true.
Yes.
Imagine if we healed that.
Imagine if you can heal that.
And you do some of this techniques, and you also work with pets and animals, I know.
I do pet communication and spirit release therapy. And it's interesting because when you start looking more into this, you keep going back. It's almost a rabbit hole, and you have to say, how far do you go? But
You follow your truth and you go as far as you need to.
you go, yes, how far do you go? And that's the answer.
That's, only you know.
Yeah. And so the spirit release has been an interesting thing because it's opened my eyes to when you're seeing people acting outside of themselves.
Mm.
And you can then begin to see past that and recognize that sometimes it really isn't them.
That's very true.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a whole nother episode. We could sit and talk about spirit releasement. How do you do it? When do you know you need to check that out? How do you know that's an option?
Right.
But if you're thinking about that right now, Lumineers, you can head over to BernetteSherman.com and look at her services and speak with her about it and see if that is something that you need to be following up with.
It's a big one.
Not to leave you on a big bomb there, but I think we're going to start getting ready for a little channeling on set. This is an exciting day for the first episode of Season 3, The Lighter Side Show. Thank you so much for being here,
Thank
for
you.
sharing your stories, your history, your how did you do it kind of a thing,
Thank
or
you.
should we say how they presented it to you. Maybe you had a choice. I like to think you had a choice, but
We always have a choice. At any moment you can say no, but that doesn't mean they're going to stop asking.
Right. That's how I felt it when you were saying it. They're not going to give up. This one's going to be yours.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much for being
Thank you,
here.
Jamie.
Really, so honored.
Oh.
And I can't wait to have you back.
Thank you.
Yes.
I can't wait to be back.
Oh, lots more is going to be happening. Thank you, Lumineers, for lending us your eyes, your ears. Have a beautiful rest of your day. And remember, it's not woo-woo, it's true. All of it's true. All of it. Bye.
I may not believe as you believe, but that doesn't mean either of us is wrong. Like there's 1,000+ universities, yeah. The universe is big enough for us all. I know love is big enough for the world. And I know love is strong enough to handle all of us. And I know love is in